Bill Murray, Jan Vogler, Neil Young, Daniel Ek, and the number 16. Bill Murray and Jan Vogler, who is a world-renowned cellist, met in an airport lounge.
That's true. It was Berlin Airport, my hometown, and I was boarding the flight, and Bill tapped on my shoulder and said, "What are you going to do with this big box?" He saw my cello, and on the plane...
You're going to fit that thing in the overhead.
Oh, so you started the conversation.
Like I was damaged, and said, no, it has its own seat.
This chance meeting led to a great friendship, and in 2017, they made an album together called New Worlds. They came into the studio together to do some promos for some focus playlist where students listen to instrumental music as they study. And it was Bill and Jan chatting back and forth about the record. On a break, I was talking to Jan about our kids, and I told Jan that my oldest daughter, after finishing at NYU, had moved to Santa Barbara. Bill Murray overheard this conversation and immediately said, she needs to go to La Superica. And we said, what's that? And he said, oh, it's a great Mexican restaurant, and make sure she orders the number 16. 6 or 8 months later, I went to Santa Barbara to visit my daughter. And of course, I wanted to make a pilgrimage to La Superica, which turns out to be Julia Child's favorite Mexican restaurant. So we walk into a little area where you order, and there's one other customer there with a friend. And I turn to my daughters and I go, is that Neil Young? When he went back to order more sauce, I could tell by his distinctive voice, it was Neil Young. So we were the only 2 customers there. We made eye contact, so I decided, okay, I'll say hi. I let him know that I was working at Spotify. We had an amazing chat, and he then told me that he had had a great visit with Daniel Ek, who's the guy who created Spotify. And that he, even though he, didn't like digital streaming, he thought Daniel was a good guy and they had remained friends. We also talked about his car called Link Volt, which is a 1959 Lincoln Continental that he'd converted to an electric vehicle. He took me outside, showed me the car. So that could be the end of the story. But a few months later, I was in Stockholm at Spotify headquarters, and I run into Daniel Ek. So I'm chatting with Daniel about this, that, or the other thing, and I say, oh, by the way, I ran into Neil Young, and Neil Young told me about y'all's visit. And then Daniel lit up and said, that was funny because I flew to Santa Barbara, and I was told someone would pick me up at the airport, and of course you assume it's somebody on Neil's team. And as he waited curbside, all of a sudden around the corner comes a beautiful vintage 60s convertible with none other than Neil Young. Neil Young picking up curbside. Pretty good story, right?